Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one, and welcome to another episode of Mingles with Jingles, taking the tedium out of Monday for, I don't know actually, this is episode 466, so quite a while now. Very happy to be able to say that this episode is once again sponsored by Nordpass. As usual, head over to nordpass.com/jingles and use code JINGLES to get yourselves a Nordpass 2-year premium plan plus 1 month free, all covered by their 30-day no questions asked money back guarantee. And I've been extolling the virtues of Nordpass for well over a year now. At this point, you've probably heard everything. It's not just a password manager, it's a secure data vault, it's a data breach scanner. This time around, though, instead of me repeating the same stuff that you've probably heard previously when I take one of these sponsorships, I figured that we'd hand it over to you. Why not? They keep coming back to me with these sponsorship offers, so clearly we're doing something right. Clearly, a lot of you are taking advantage of the offer, which means a lot of you are using Nordpass, so let's hear about your experiences. What do you like about it? Is it the way it keeps track of dozens, scores, or maybe even hundreds of different passwords across hundreds of different websites so you don't have to? For me, that's the number one reason why I use it, because it's pretty well documented at this point that I use the same 2 passwords across every website I visited for the best part of 15 years, so Nordpass, comes in very useful for that. Is it the data breach scanner? Is it the secure data vault? Is it all of these things? Or is it the 30-day money-back guarantee if you've tried it and you decided it wasn't for you? Let us know in the comments, and while you're having a think about it, if you don't already use it, head over to nordpass.com/jingles and use code JINGLES, and you can get Nordpass with a 2-year premium plan plus 1 month for free. And if you don't like it, you can always return it within 30 days. Get your money back, no questions asked. So, it's kind of traditional at this point in an episode of Mingles with Jingles for me to say something like, well, there hasn't been an awful lot going on in the gaming world lately, but this week that's just not true. There has. The Harry Potter game's out. Hogwarts Legacy. I never know whether or not that should be pronounced Hogwarts or Hogwarts. Who cares? Certainly not me. It has been plagued with some day one issues, lots and lots of stuttering and frame rate issues apparently, regardless of the quality of the hardware that you're trying to run it on. Some people reckon it's a shader compilation issue every time you enter a new area. Nobody really knows. I know people have been having problems getting the game to run smoothly, if at all. But, well, big game, release day, it's kind of to be expected. Cyberpunk 2077, while it worked flawlessly for me, and I'm not talking about the fact that it just was too meaty a game to even run on last generation consoles. People on PC who had machines that were well above the minimum specifications just couldn't get the game to work. And this is the experience that a lot of people are having with Hogwarts Legacy as well. But this is to be expected. Big game, hotly anticipated, probably not strictly 100% ready for release, but what game is these days when it's released? I'm sure within a week, at the most, everything will be fine. And people are going crazy about this game. People that I never expected to see streaming it are streaming it. Like the world's most toxic World of Warships streamer, Flamu. He's really getting into Hogwarts Legacy. He's playing it almost exclusively at the moment. Basically, everybody who can stream it is streaming it. Or they're, at the very least, trying to. Trying to get through some of those launch day stuttering and hitching issues. Initial indications, which probably aren't going to come as a real surprise to most people, are that Hogwarts Legacy is a massively popular and massively successful game, despite certain members of the online community trying to get the game boycotted in order to punish the game developer for releasing a game because of something that the writer, J.K. Rowling of the original books, may or may not have meant when she said something on Twitter many, many years ago, because, gender politics. But yeah, Hogwarts Legacy doing fantastically well despite some initial launch day issues. But I have a question, and it has nothing to do with mastering your broomstick flying training or learning how to play Quidditch or trying to guess which house the sorting hat will put you into. No, it's a much more basic and fundamental question than that. You ready? Here's my question. Question coming up in 3, 2, 1. Am I the only one who doesn't give a shit? it's like the entire world just went crazy. It's like, oh my god, a Harry Potter game. Oh, I've waited my whole life. Oh, I can't wait. I mean, it's kind of, I have to admit, if I'm being completely fair, it's kind of like my reaction to the news that a Cyberpunk game was coming out. So I can sort of, kind of understand where it's all coming from. But on the subject of a Harry Potter game, I just don't give a shit. And I think, because I thought, is there something wrong with me? Because everybody's going crazy about this game. And I just don't care. Gaze upon the field in which I grow all of my fucks about a new Harry Potter game. Cast thine eyes upon it, and verily thou wilt see that it is barren. I just don't care. But everybody else is getting so caught up in the passion and the excitement and the drama about the release of Hogwarts Legacy. I started to think there was something wrong with me. I was like, what was it? It must be me. I mean, it has to be me. Everybody else is going out of their minds. Am I just some kind of soulless, emotionless monster robot that's lost the capacity to get excited about anything? Have I just become so emotionally stunted and crippled and jaded in my old age that I've lost that capacity for childlike joy and wonder? But no, I got excited when CD Projekt Red announced that they're definitely doing the Cyberpunk expansion this year, and Idris Elba is joining Keanu Reeves in the cast, so that can't be it. And then I figured out what it was, and it kind of is me, I'm sorry to say. Don't worry. Well, I mean, there's no point in worrying. The problem is irreversible. There's nothing anybody can do about it, and it's only going to get worse as time goes on. You see, the problem is, the reason why I just don't care about a Harry Potter game, I'm not 12 years old. It's been a really long time since I was 12 years old. I can barely even remember what it was like to be 12 years old, which means that as each passing day goes by, my ability to give a fuck about Harry Potter diminishes with the passing of time. I never really gave a shit in the first place, and I give even less and less of a shit as time marches on. For at least the last 30 years, I have just lacked the fundamental ability to be amused, enraptured, or enthralled by stories of boy wizards and sorting hats. I think I must have been at least 20 years too late for that particular boat. It has definitely sailed without me. I get it. I understand that the problem exists with me and not the Harry Potter game, which by all accounts is very, very good. And I'm certainly not trying to ridicule anybody who is getting excited and is losing their mind about playing a Harry Potter game. I get it. I understand. It was a massive cultural phenomenon, Harry Potter, that is, not the game. So I understand. And in fact, I can even relate, because there was a time when I would just completely lose my mind about the idea of a new Star Wars game coming out. You could have, at one point, put a piece of shit on a shingle, stamped it with a Star Wars logo, and I would have bought it, played it, and told everybody it was fantastic. Fortunately, George Lucas himself, because Han shot first, and later Disney cured me of that particular problem, so I suppose I should be grateful. And I suppose I'm also guilty of the same thing with regards to the Cyberpunk game, although Cyberpunk 2077 is objectively a good game. It certainly wasn't a revolutionary game in the way that a lot of people would have had you believe, but it is a very, very good game, which I'm very grateful for because I adore Cyberpunk. You know, I was losing my mind over the books of William Gibson and Walter John Williams in the same way that people lost their mind over the books of J.K. Rowling, so I can relate. But I'm just not excited. I mean, I'll probably get the game at some point, and I'll probably play it, and I'll probably enjoy it, because it is apparently very, very good. But I'm way more excited about Deliver Us Mars, a game that relatively few people had heard of, from an indie developer, than a massive new Harry Potter title, which is at least a very, very good game. Apparently, like I said, I haven't played it. I'm in no rush to play it, but I haven't heard anybody who has played it. You know, launch day patch issues aside, I haven't heard anybody who has played it said, yeah, it's alright. The response has been overwhelmingly, wow, great game. You do get a lot of that though, don't you? You know, new games that are coming out, they get massively hyped. You see all the pre-release stuff, and it's a concept that you actually care about, and so you get quite invested in it, and you eagerly wait for launch day. You watch all the previews, and they all seem pretty good, and you think, yeah, I can get behind this, and then the game comes out, and you think, yeah, it's all right. it's fine. There's nothing especially wrong with it, but you just can't get excited about it. I remember thinking that about The Division by Ubisoft when it first came out, which certainly wasn't a bad game. And there were certain things in it that were really, really good. But the overall impression, even though I sank, lots and lots of hours into it, we'll talk about that in a moment, actually. But the overall feeling that I have when I look back at The Division is, it was all right. And yet, despite, I certainly never went crazy about the game. Like I said, the overwhelming feeling that I have when I look back and think of The Division is, it's all right. And yet I sank hundreds and hundreds of hours into it. And there are probably games that inspire that kind of feeling in you as well. Games where you think, it's fine, there's nothing wrong with it, it's not great. And yet you've sunk hundreds and hundreds of hours into it. I wouldn't be at all surprised if games like World of Tanks and World of Warships featured fairly prominently on any of those internal lists that you may have. But I would also be not at all surprised if games like the Ubisoft-style open-world, games like The Division, games like, well, basically anything that Ubisoft's made in the last 15 years, where they've shoehorned that particular style of open-world gameplay into every single intellectual property they own. Yes, Assassin's Creed, I'm looking at you here. And when it works, it can work spectacularly well. Yes, Assassin's Creed Odyssey is probably a great example, and to a lesser degree, Assassin's Creed Valhalla. But when it doesn't work, you end up with Far Cry 6. Or The Division, if I'm being completely honest. And yet people still sink hundreds and hundreds, and sometimes thousands of hours into what are objectively mediocre in the case of The Division, or bad in the case of Far Cry 6 games. And it's because of that open world gameplay loop. You see, whenever I would have a mammoth Division session, or a Far Cry 6 session, I would keep going, even though I wasn't really enjoying myself, because there was always just that one more thing to do. I'm right next to this next mission, so I'll just do that and see what happens then. Oh, hang on a second, there's a hunting area here, and I could really use an upgrade for my ammo pouch, so I'll go and do that. And there's always just that one other thing that's right there, and it's not going to take long to do. And before you know it, you've spent 6 hours playing a game that you're not really having that much fun playing. And then the realization hits you that you've just spent 6 hours playing Far Cry 6, right? And you kind of feel vaguely dirty. And you never really feel, when you've finished, you never feel like, right, I can't wait to play that again tomorrow. And yet you do start playing it again the next day. Mostly because you've got nothing better to do, because you're waiting for Cyberpunk 2077 or Hogwarts Legacy to come out. So you start playing again the next day. Even though you're not raving to your friends about this game, you're not recommending everybody plays it, and you're certainly not looking forward to playing it, but it's there and it's something to do. So before you know it, the next day you've spent another 6 hours playing a game that you don't really care about, and you're definitely not excited about, but it's sucking up all of your playtime, rather than playing something that's actually good. Mostly because you're waiting for something that's actually good to come out so you can stop playing The Division or Far Cry 6. And yet it's sucking up all of your playtime. I mean, The Division wasn't a bad game, but it was one of those, it's fine. I mean, Far Cry 6 was a bad game. The Division wasn't. It was just kind of, it's fine, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. And it's fine, it's okay, there's nothing wrong with it is really as good as Ubisoft needs to do. Because they've got that compulsive open world gameplay loop that just keeps you sat there doing the next thing for hours and hours and hours. I mean, there have been games that... Star Trek Online is a great example. It doesn't matter what is it, Cryptic Entertainment, who developed that? I can't remember. Whoever the developers are, it has been shown that it does not matter what they do by way of supporting and continuing to develop Star Trek Online. I'm not saying they don't do a good job of it. They actually do. They keep wheeling old Star Trek actors out of suspended animation in order to spearhead and be the face of whatever new content patch they're delivering. And there are regular content updates. You know, they do a good job of supporting the game. But it has been shown that they could do nothing. There could be an 8-month content drought, and it wouldn't make a single bit of difference to the success of Star Trek Online. The subscriber numbers never go up, but they never go down either, regardless of what the developers do. So on the one hand, I suppose you have to take your hat off to them for continuing to develop and provide content for the game, when it has been mathematically proven that they don't need to. Right? They're not going to lose any money. But Star Trek Online has always been like that. And to a degree, the original Division was kind of like that too. I mean, the subscriber numbers never really fluctuated. Star Trek Online is an old game. I think it came out in 2010. I mean, it's a comparable age to something like World of Tanks. And while World of Tanks had a massive graphics engine update, and looks way, way better now than it did when it was first released, there hasn't really been anything like that for Star Trek Online. I mean, it's and again, I need to stress, it's not abandonware. It looked pretty good when it first came out. It still looks all right today, but it's not going to be winning any graphics awards, and yet none of the players seem to give a shit. They just seem to be quite happy with the fact that they're playing Star Trek Online, regardless of what the developer does or doesn't do to support it. The original Division kind of had that same vibe, although it's nowhere near as old as Star Trek Online. It was released in 2016. It didn't really seem to matter what Ubisoft did by way of development. And again, you know, it wasn't abandonware. There were regular updates and new features and so on, but it never really seemed to matter as far as the subscriber base was concerned, because of that whole open world gameplay loop that caused people to just sink hundreds and thousands of hours into something that they weren't really having that much fun playing. So naturally, there was the Division 2, which is basically more of the same. Although it's been having problems recently, although nothing to do with the gameplay loop. So, and this is kind of amusing, in a kind of cruel way, I suppose. So Massive Entertainment, the developers of the Division 2, which is 4 years old this year. You know, it's not that old a game. Just ran into a bit of a problem, and had nothing whatsoever to do with the gameplay. It's to do with updates to the game engine. They released a patch that broke things, and again, I played the Division 2 as well. It's one of those games that my friend Roy and I get together over online in order to stay in touch, although we haven't done it in a while because, well, again, you know, it's one of those games where you're not really having that much fun playing it, but it's something to do, and you can get together with your friends while playing it. But yeah, and patch days in the Division 2 were always notoriously bad. I mean, even more so than a World of Warcraft expansion release. It was just don't even bother trying to play the game on patch day. Get it patched, fine. You know, fire it up, patch it, and then put the game away and come back the next day, and things might be stable. But they've outdone themselves this time. They released a patch that broke things so badly. What basically happened was they keep releasing these updates to fix things that are broken with the game. You know, and they're usually minor balancing issues, little tweaks to item stats here or there, or addressing the way that the game does certain things, whatever. I don't need to tell you what an update is. But the update that they just released broke the entire system for updating the game. And I'm not exaggerating, right? I know people on the internet like to overuse the word broken. Oh, this game is so broken, this system is so broken, when all they're describing are minor balance issues, right? It does get overused, but in this case, Massive have fundamentally broken with their latest update, as in it just doesn't work anymore, the entire system for updating the game. So they are now in the situation where they have to fix the system that updates the game before it can update the game to fix the other problems. They can't even release an update to fix whatever it was that they broke with the update, because it's broken the system for applying updates. I mean, this is a cock-up of monumental proportions. Worst case scenario here, and this is absolutely the worst case scenario, but it's not entirely unthinkable. I mean, this might actually happen. Let's say the developers managed to identify, I mean, I presume they already have identified it, this news is a couple of days old, and apparently they've been spending days and days and days doing nothing but rewriting the patch delivery system because, you know, their jobs depend on it. They can't update the game until it gets fixed. But here's the issue. Let's say that today they fix the problem, at least on the developer's side. They still have to figure out a way of rolling out that fix to everybody who has the broken patch delivery system installed on their machines. Right? It's all well and good fixing the problem server side, but then you have to get that server side fixed to the players, and you can't because you've got a broken patch delivery system. So worst case scenario is that players of the Division 2 may end up having to completely reinstall the game in order to get it working again, once Massive Entertainment figure out and fix what the problem is. Which means that with the Division 2, Massive Entertainment may have managed to completely accidentally and unintentionally figure out a way of doing something that has so far defied every single other developer and publisher of one of these open world gameplay loop, it's fine, it's okay, and yet I've just sat here spending 4 hours playing it type of games. They may have figured out a way to actually negatively impact the number of people playing. Because if you have to go to the trouble of uninstalling and then reinstalling a game that when you sit down to think about it is kind of meh, why do I even play this? A lot of people are just not going to bother. Congratulations, Massive. You may have completely unintentionally stumbled upon the solution to a problem that's been vexing game developers for decades. How to make people actually stop playing the kind of game that people traditionally just don't really bother to stop playing. Good job. Well done. I mean, I have the Division 2 installed. I'd even forgotten that it was installed, and then I saw some news about the Division 2, and I thought to myself, oh yeah, the Division 2, I've got that. I should start... Oh, right. Yeah, I can't, can I? It probably needs a few patches. Well, never mind. Back to World of Warcraft, I suppose. And on that bombshell, that's it for this week's episode of Mingles with Jingles. Hope you've enjoyed it, and as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.